From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Ijoma Onyato.
Hello and welcome. Southwest governors reach agreement with federal government on the modalities for implementing the regional security outfit, Operation Amotekun. Transparency International rates Nigeria low in the fight against corruption, ranks country 146 out of the 180 countries, and fourth most corrupt country in West Africa. Economic and Financial Crimes Commission disagrees with Transparency International corruption rating as main opposition PDP insists it's been vindicated with the reports. And Chinese authorities lock down more cities as they try to contain spread of the deadly coronavirus. Plus, we'll have business, sports, news from Abuja, the FCT, and of course later on we'll head off to our studios in London.
On business news tonight, Minister for Transport Rotimi Amechi announces plan to enable access to $200 million vessel financing fund by ship owners in Nigeria.
On sports news tonight, Inter Milan confirmed the signing of Nigeria international Victor Moses, becoming Antonio Conte's fourth acquisition from the Premier League to the Italian side this season.
And from Abuja, family of slain University of Maiduguri student asks government to intensify efforts in combating terrorism and end kidnapping.
Today, an agreement is finally reached between the governors of the Southwest states and the federal government over the now famous Regional Security Initiative, codenamed Operation Amotekun. The Southwest governors will now have to draw up a legal framework for the initiative, which has been generating controversy since it was launched 2 weeks ago. The agreement was reached at the end of a meeting with the Vice President, the 6 Southwestern state governors, the Inspector General of Police, and the Attorney General of the Federation. The chairman of the Southwest Governors Forum and Governor of Ondo State, Rotimi Akeredolu, says the argument has now been resolved and that the statement credited to the Attorney General of the Federation was taken out of context. He insists that at no time did the federal government declare Amotekun illegal.
We are going to have the legal framework to back this Amotekun, and this legal framework is going to be one in which all of us will look at, and we'll be sure that it goes without any hindrance. You know, the federal government is starting community policing, and it's more of, in essence, really, it's about community policing. So we're going to work together and see the community policing and Amotekun work in a way. There were consultations. Don't say there were no consultations. There were consultations, because we held discussion with the IG then, and what has developed is what has led to this. Not that there were no consultations. We just felt that, look, with all this noise outside, it's better for us to sit down. And you remember, even immediately the noise started, I said that we are going to explore political solution. And all of us are here. My colleague, Deputy Governor of Oyo, who is of PDP, all of us are here. So we are looking at this solution to it now, political and legal solution to it. All of us will do it. Yeah, the Attorney General has spoken. I'm sure you all read the statement that it was misinterpreted. So it's so clear. So, I mean, there was no time. At no time did the government wanted to stop Amotekun. That's what we must go about with. And all of us believe that they don't want to stop Amotekun. And when the Federal Attorney General hasn't spoken, it's all about us. So there's no problem.
We move on to another story that's already generating reactions across the country, and that's the Transparency International's latest ranking of Nigeria on the Corruption Perception Index. In the latest report, Nigeria has been ranked 146 out of 180 countries on the focus after dropping 2 places. The head of Transparency International in Nigeria, Mr. Awal Rafsanjani, says Nigeria scored 26 out of 100 points, dropping from the 27 points it's maintained since 2017. Mr. Rafsanjani alleges selective adherence to the rule of law and corruption in political parties as some of the reasons for the poor ranking.
The federal government also established
At several meetings, the federal government has maintained its stance on corruption and improving transparency, using various platforms such as the whistleblower policy, the government integrated financial management information system, amongst others, to drive home its fight against corruption. Great ideas to curb corruption, you may say, but the global anti-corruption body, Transparency International, has ranked Nigeria 2 places behind its 2018 ranking on the Corruption Perceptions Index.
The index is 100% impartial, objective, globally well respected. The negative results from this year provoked tall cautions. Despite proclaimed war on corruption, why is Nigeria perceived by Nigerians and the international community still as very corrupt? The government of Nigeria claims winning the war on corruption, but is this statement backed by evidence?
There were areas of recommendations which the anti-corruption body wants the government to address.
Anti-corruption stands the greatest chance of victory where there is a collective action of citizens against corruption and strong collaboration between state and non-state actors, where there is no cherry picking in terms of which corruption case to prosecute and one not to prosecute, where there is alignment of purpose and commitment among the arms of government, executive, legislature, and judiciary, and where the anti-corruption campaign is transparent, inclusive, and objective, there must be no room for untouchable, no matter how close to government power or influence.
The Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation is not comfortable with the findings of the report.
Transparency International should come to specifics. In terms of legislation, as I've told you, we have come up with a lot of legislation, a lot of policies, and indeed that have positively impacted on our resolve, in fight against corruption. In terms of institutional support, we have established institutions, we have given them the clear, free hand to operate, and they have recorded successes both in terms of convictions and in terms of recoveries.
This report may just serve as a wake-up call for
Now, for the main opposition party, the People's Democratic Party, it believes that the damning 2019 Corruption Index report is a vindication of its stand that corruption has worsened under the current government of the All Progressives Congress. The party said in a statement that it's a national embarrassment that under an administration by the same leader who wears the medal as African Union Anti-Corruption Champion and whose government boasts of zero tolerance for corruption, our nation now ranks as 4th amongst the corrupt countries in West Africa and one of the leading most corrupt countries in the world. The PDP says it's also challenging President Buhari's handling of the economy since he came to power in 2015, saying the fact remains that the Buhari presidency and the APC cannot controvert these damning facts. The only thing left for them is to apologize to Nigerians. The main opposition party also concluded that the current government has not shown that it's indeed winning the war against corruption. But the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission is not accepting the figures and it's rejecting the ratings. The anti-corruption agency describes Transparency International's report as baseless, jaundiced and illogical, saying it's a far cry from its achievements in the fight against corruption, particularly under the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari. The statement reads in part, Suffice it to say that in 2019, the year under review by TI was particularly a remarkable one for the EFCC, as the Commission secured unprecedented record of 1,268 convictions, including that of a former state governor and a serving senator who was convicted for defrauding his state to the tune of 7.65 billion naira. The Commission says it will not be distracted in its mandate of fighting corruption. Well, let's put all this into perspective. I'm being joined on the news at 10 by Channels Television's data analyst, Mr. Babajide Ogunsanwo. Thanks a lot for joining us on the news at 10.
The pleasure is always mine.
I know. What a day for somebody who's a figures person like you. I mean, looking at TI in the last 5 years, just take us through what it has been and what our rankings have looked like.
You know, before we go there, today is really a very special day. More than 4 centuries ago, exactly on this day, in the year 1556, the world witnessed the worst earthquake of mankind, Shangxin earthquake. Killed over 800,000 people on this same day in 1556. Today, there's another earthquake Africa faces, earthquake corruption. Now, let's take a look at the summary of the report from Transparency International and what does this all really mean. So Transparency International has provided us a ladder.
I see you have a ladder there.
Oh, yes. Okay. And if you can look at the top of the ladder, that is really where Nigeria belongs, currently occupied by Denmark, New Zealand, and Finland. Those are the top 3 countries that have the best rating up there where Nigeria should be, according to Transparency International. In that report, they say we're currently here. We rank 146 out of 180 countries. Last year, it was a bit better. We're 144 out of 180. Oh, yes, there are some countries we've done better than. The worst country, Somalia. But that is not where we should be benchmarking ourselves with. Ghana, South Africa are performing better than Nigeria, and really that's where we should be. But let's look at the summary of that report. Within that report, if we take a look at it, it shows out of the 180 countries, 50 countries have the same results, or 52 countries have the same result as last year. That's the first thing. The second is 60 countries improved. And the third is 68 countries performed worse than they did last year. And if we take a look at that, the summary means that only 33 countries, or 33% of countries, have seen an improved performance. The second thing we should look at is what are the limitations of Transparency International's report. And the first limitation is that report only talks about corruption in the public sector. The report doesn't talk about anything about corruption in the private sector. Neither does it talk about money laundering activities or activities of those that enable corruption, like the financial advisors, the accountants. Neither does that report as well talk about the perception of citizens. It really focuses about the perception based on what business professionals and country experts have talked about.
But in terms of us trying to compare, were those not the measures and parameters that have been used in the last 5 years? Has it changed? I mean, looking at what it was last year, the issue we're trying to bring out is that we seem to have moved down. And from a data perspective, why?
From the data perspective, let's look at our performance within the last 5 years. Let's start from that, and then we'll talk about the reasons why corruption has reduced, or we've done worse based on Transparency International's report. And if we focus on that report, what we'll see is that in 2015, Transparency International, using the same measures they've used in the last 5 years, they scored us 26 out of 100 in 2015. In 2016, which was 1 year into the government, the report was better. So we moved from 26 over 100 in 2015 to 28 over 100 the following year. In 2017, corruption became worse. In 2018, we scored the same thing as we did in 2017, 27 over 100 in 2017, and again 27 over 100 in 2018.
So just from a graphical perspective, looking at it on the screen there, what does that say? Is this good or bad?
This is bad. This shows that corruption is back to its level, corruption is back to the level it was in 2015, the year the government came in. Yes, a year after, based on Transparency International's report, we've seen an improvement. Well, here's what Nigerians are concerned about. In a recent survey by Transparency International and Afrobarometer, they asked Nigerians what are they really bothered about in corruption. And 69% of Nigerians say the police, is a major place where they feel corruption. Another 60% say members of parliament. Local government councils, over 55% of those surveyed say they have a problem with corruption in those areas. So if we want to fight corruption, if we look at the screen, those are the areas where Nigerians are really bothered about. Government officials, even the judiciary. Nigerians point to the judiciary and magistrates as areas where they see there's a lot of corruption. But let's take a look at the top 7 reasons why our results look worse than it was last year. And if we focus on those top 7 reasons, Ijeoma, bribery, diversion of funds, corruption, Transparency International talks about we need to have a merit-based system in appointing civil service jobs. But let's wrap this all up quickly. What does all of this mean? What does this report today mean? And here are the top 3 things it means. The first is it might become a bit more expensive for businesses to access international loans because it attracts a higher risk. And finally, it puts a negative identity for positive Nigerians. Right, and let's remember, Ijeoma, the worst disease in the world is corruption, but there's a cure. Transparency. All right, our data analyst there, Babajide Ogunsowe, thanks a lot for sharing that and crunching those numbers, even with the ladder that you brought in. Thanks yes, we need to improve where we're. Right. And in part 2, after the break, we'll continue our discussions on Transparency International's corruption rating, and the chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, Professor Ishe Sage, will be our guest. That's in a moment. Please join us again.
Hello, food already. Have you not go shop today?
Today na my cheat day.
So what do you want?
Give me 2 wraps of pound.
Excuse me, madam. The client has just arrived and will be upstairs very soon.
All right, send him right up. Thank you. Hey, Mama, make I see that brocoto.
You know, see. For red brocoto and assorted meat.
That one.
Madam, stop me now. Customer nuggets, which one you want? Amala, Ewedu, Pomo. And then brocoto. No, customer don't buy. Ebola abeyan, spirit of human being.
Okay, no fire na my meat be that.
Internet customer. Abeg, give me brocoto. When she come, you will give am another one.
Okay, no fire.
Don't miss out on life's little pleasures. Upgrade to the super fast and reliable MTN 4G network.
Let my meat go.
It's really tough right now. It's hard to expand my business.
Exactly.